not waste any more time, and let's get right into college football season beginning, because the headliners from this past weekend were Georgia, Notre Dame, and USC, who all won their respective top 25 matchups. Jaevon, obviously, you are a USC fan, loud and proud, and so we will definitely get to the Trojans. But the number one team in the nation, the Georgia Bulldogs, beat number 14 Clemson 34-3, made it look real easy. Even though the Ohio State Buckeyes, the number two team in the nation, played Akron, they did handle them 52-6, as well as Oregon beating Idaho in a close one, 24-14. And then we get to Notre Dame and Texas A&M in College Station. Notre Dame comes away with a 23-13 win. Bit of revenge for Riley Leonard against his former coach at Duke, Mike Elko, who is now with the Aggies. And then we see on Sunday Night Football, before the NFL officially gets started, number 23 USC beats number 13 LSU 27-20. So, Toddy, I'm going to kick things off with you, because aside from the Florida State game that's going on right now on Monday Night Football, the Sunday Night Football game was really what we were left off with from the weekend. And so just how did you feel about that top 25 win for your Trojans?
Miller Moss, Heisman candidate. He's thrown his hat into the Heisman race. All offseason, we kind of just heard how, USC can put up however amount of points, but they can't stop a nosebleed. With the hiring of DeAnthony Lynn, the son of Anthony Lynn, who is, I think he was one of the Niners, I think, assistant head coaches last year. I'm not sure where he is now. But defense is balls to the wall now. Only held them to 20 points last night. USC, our offense is elite. We have elite quarterback play. I think our receiving core is top notch. When you got guys like Kyron Hudson and Jacoby Lane, we just got dudes pretty much everywhere on offense. You got Lincoln Riley, the mad scientist, scheming up plays for us. LSU, however, the receiver, Kyron Lacey, was basically the number 3 receiver last year, under Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. He was kind of like the guy that flew under the radar, but he's now the number 1 receiver. He caught like 4 passes on the first drive, which was insane. I think Garrett Nussberger played pretty well. I think he's an NFL talent. I just thought USC got key stops. LSU got to the red zone, and only 3 trips that they got to the red zone, they scored 6 points. And I think last year, if this were USC's defense last year, that would have been 21 points. USC can now tackle, which is amazing. I think we being the USC Trojans, definitely have a shot in the Big Ten, and have a shot to make the college football playoff. I think it's I thought this was going to be an 8-4-ish, 9-3 team. And one of those toss-up games was definitely this first game, the LSU game. And we kind of came in there and we handled business. I was very excited to see that we can tackle now. And I already knew the offense was going to put up points. It always just came down to, can the defense get stops? And the defense generated multiple stops last night. And that's really all the Trojans need, is to have a fighting chance. Because last year, Caleb was out there by himself, having to score 35-plus points a game, which is pretty insane. Like, hey, Caleb, for us to win, we need you to throw 5 touchdowns and 400 yards every single game. And that's damn near impossible for any quarterback. So I think the defense played pretty well. And if the defense can just live up to that same potential, we'll be a contender for the college football playoff.
Kyle, which game stood out to you this weekend? Was it this game between the Trojans and the Tigers of LSU, or was it the Tigers of Clemson getting throttled by the Georgia Bulldogs, or even was it Texas A&M and Notre Dame, or a game that we haven't talked about yet? What stood out to you from this weekend?
So I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I was pretty busy this weekend. I didn't really get a big chance to catch the college football matchups this week. But I did see a couple of the highlights. I saw Alabama, which I like a lot from Alabama. They're both their good running backs. They got Jam Miller and the can't remember the other dude's name, the starting Haynes. But I
Yeah,
feel like they're
Alabama, I
gonna do
think they
something
put up
again.
like 63 points in that game. They started a bunch of freshmen in the secondary. They think it's something Williams, Ryan Williams.
Yeah, that 17-year-old kid.
17-year-old kid Ryan Williams had like 2 touchdowns, true freshman. Dude's a dog. He'll be one of those guys in the SEC.
17 years old.
Yeah, 17 years old. He had like 100 and some yards, 2 touchdowns. He's a dog.
He should have been a Texas A&M Aggie, but I digress.
It's a cold world.
Wow,
But Alabama, I think Jalen Milroe only threw like 9 passes in that game, and he threw for like 200 yards. So it was pretty wrapped up pretty quick. But Kalen DeBoer and that offense, what it's going to look like, you kind of saw a sneak preview of it, of what it can look like and what Jalen Milroe will look like in that offense. I think it'll be very interesting to see what he'll look like being a better passer downfield with the football.
Yeah, and when it comes to the Texas A&M and Notre Dame game, I just wanted to talk about that for a minute, just because I write for a website called Aggies Wire for USA Today, and so I'm not quite a casual when it comes to Texas A&M. I have a little bit of knowledge, but I'm not far off the casual radar, as proved last week when I couldn't properly pronounce Aeneas Smith's name, new Philadelphia Eagle. Toddy, did I get it right, or did I struggle on
Smith?
that one too? Aeneas. See, still can't do it.
That's Kaz's boy.
Yeah, it's Kaz's boy, because now, buddy. I mean, he's starting the year.
Because people are Eagles doesn't mean they're my boys. Okay, we got to figure some stuff out first and foremost. All right, we're gonna see.
Yeah, and he's starting the year out on the injured reserve. But Kaz, before I get to the Notre Dame and Texas A&M game that I wanted to speak about, was there anything that stood out to you from college football? Because I know that college football isn't quite your bag like the NFL is, but from the opening weekend, were there any games or performances that stood out to you?
I'll give my one little hot college take right here. I watched the Iowa game. I'm trying, you guys. I'm trying my best to lock in and.
Wasn't it like 12-0 or 12 something like at halftime?
Sounds like a Hawkeyes game.
6-0 ended up being 40-0.
Yeah.
So everybody on all my socials around here, because we're all just a bunch of corn-fed crybabies, we're all like, "Yep, typical Iowa football, going to be like a 9-0 game, and maybe might even lose and end up winning 40-0." So I definitely tapped into that the best that I could. On Saturdays, I'm pretty busy. With just like personal training and stuff like that. It's Saturdays are kind of my day to kind of get a lot of my actual work stuff done. So not only do I already not have any loyalty towards college football, I'm usually always doing something on Saturdays. So I just kind of chimed in, checked some things out just to give it the old college try. I'm trying, I'm like, maybe it'll click someday. Maybe I'm gonna fall in love with this someday. Maybe I'm gonna, root for the Hawkeyes because I live here, or maybe I'll root for my hometown or home state team, the Illinois Fighting Illini. It's fun to watch. It's fun to watch. I pretty much just read Twitter and look up the highlights. And the only thing that really stood out to me that had me jumping out of my chair was that pick that like went around the whole world. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, the one-handed catch. I think it was
that was a crazy. That was like probably the second craziest interception I've ever seen. The first one was the one from I think 2 or 3 years ago. There was another college interception. It was like nuts. I can't remember who it was.
Was it?
I don't know. You would know. It was insane. It was like debatably like the best pick of all time. And I think the guy picked it off. Yeah, they picked it off like this, I think.
Yeah.
Was that what it was?
It might have been the dude from Oklahoma. I forget what his name is, but I think I remember that game.
Yeah, that was like a few years back. And I saw this. I'm like, I watched that pick so many times, and I was like, dog, he got up. And to catch it the way that he caught it, I'm like, I try to I do this because I'm an idiot, but I try to kind of mimic it on my bed to see if I could I'm like, I'm pretty athletic. How? You know what I'm saying? How did he do that? So that was pretty much the extent of my college viewership. I'm on Twitter a lot. My homie Isley, he be in the chat sometime. He's a big Texas guy, Longhorns guy. So I kind of tap in there. I saw the Ewers kid, have a pretty solid game. He was talking him up. He mentioned Arch Manning getting in there, getting some fourth quarter play a little bit because Texas obviously handled business. But other than that, no, I just pretty much paid attention to the Iowa Hawkeyes game, and that was pretty much it. As for the games that you guys did have mentioned, I did just look up some stats just to kind of get my think piece on those, just based off what I've seen. And I just want to know, I'm going to ask Toddy, I'll ask you, Shaun, or maybe Kyle's, big on USC. and LSU. But how big of a deal is it that USC beat LSU by 7? Because early on, usually the big schools, the big SEC schools, what I'm saying, the Pac-12 schools, whatever, and Big Ten schools, they usually beat up on the little schools. It's usually 50. We talked about it last week, 56-0 or like 70-3. It's like then I look at this game and it's like, okay, LSU, I know they got some studs there. They usually have studs every year for the most part. And then USC beats them by 7. So I really want to know, how big of a deal is that? Is it just week 1 college hype, or is that like a massive leap forward for USC?
So LSU was favored by 4 points this game. I'd say like a month before the season, they were favored by a touchdown. The line continuously just kept dropping throughout the whole summer. You got guys, everybody on top, all of like the college football talk radio guys, Paul Feinbaum said that Lincoln Riley, the head coach for USC, was a joke and that he was going to get fired by the end of the year because basically USC couldn't stop anybody. I'd say USC was the butt of everybody's joke the entire offseason because a report came out saying that USC tried to reschedule this game, basically saying we were running, we didn't want to play them the first game of the season. But usually I'd say the Big Ten, or not the Big Ten, the SEC is kind of known for being the inferior conference, the best conference for college football. And then I'd say the Big Ten is second. But I feel like now the Big Ten and the SEC aren't far off based off of realignment, because there's a bunch of teams like USC leaving their respective conferences to join other conferences. And I feel like college now is kind of becoming the NFL with AFC and NFC. And I feel like those two conferences are the Big Ten and SEC. And those are going to be your AFC, NFC. And with NIL, everything's starting to change. Players are getting paid now. TV contracts are just massive. So the college landscape is changing right before our eyes. It's kind of turning into like a amateur NFL, if that makes sense. But they're getting paid now, so it's not amateurism because guys are getting paid. So I'd say it's a huge deal because USC hasn't really been good for, I'd say for the better half of out of it, except for 1 year, which was 2 years ago when Caleb Williams won the Heisman. That year we should have went to the playoff. We lost to Utah twice. But
and then wait, hold on. Then who after Utah? Who'd you lose to in the bowl game?
We lost to Tulane in the I don't even know whatever bowl it was. But pretty much since then, USC, since Reggie Bush, has been irrelevant. And so now it's like they're starting to come back. And there are other teams like Miami who had a great weekend as well. They won as a blowout, and they used to be really good a long time ago with Ed Reed and guys like Sean Taylor and Santana Moss. All those guys, when they were good, they're starting to they look like they have a really good team now. So I'd say the reason why it's a big deal is because USC hasn't really been good in a long time. So yeah, that was my little soliloquy. College football.
I got you. Yeah, I was just curious. I was like, man, because just like in the NFL, it's like week 1 comes around and we're just all happy for football to be back. So it's like we see anything, we overhype it, and I'm always like, okay, now wait a minute, are we overhyping it or is this actually a big deal? Like, for example, if the Ravens come out and beat the Chiefs week 1, and I know we're gonna get that later on, that's a big freaking deal. But then if you got a game like, I don't know, we'll say Minnesota and New York Giants, whoever wins that game is not really saying much. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, kudos for going 1-0, but it's like, who did you really beat? You beat the quarterbackless Minnesota Vikings or the New York Giants, who probably is the worst team in the NFC East. So I don't know. I just wanted to ask that because I saw your tweets. I was like, okay.
Oh yeah, I was live on Twitter last night.
Toddy hot.
I was live on Twitter last night.
Yeah, he was certainly excited about it, and you should be, because the thing about those Caleb Williams years, as you said, Toddy, is that if they actually had a defense, then they might have been a real contender. But if Caleb Williams is going to score 40 points and your team's still going to lose, that's obviously a problem. And so now getting to this Notre Dame and Texas A&M game, because going into it, Notre Dame should have probably been favored as the number 17 in the nation, going against the number 20 team in the nation on their home field. But Texas A&M was favored by, actually, I can look over at the hotline from last week, by 2.5 points. And you could have gotten minus 125 odds on that. And then Notre Dame ultimately goes on to win by 10 points. So that's a 12.5 point difference. And for me, the reason why the Aggies lost this game is because Connor Weigman struggled in his first game in the Colin Klein offense, because Colin Klein was running fast tempo, and that's what he's trying to institute. But Weigman, he was 12 of 30 for 100 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The 1 touchdown came from Le'Veon Moss, who is taking over for Reuben. I always want to say Reuben Foster because of the former 49ers linebacker, but his last name is escaping me right now. His first name is Reuben. He's out for the year. He was Texas A&M's number 1 running back that now Le'Veon Moss has taken over. But Weigman has had so much hype. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, got hurt in the 3rd, 4th game last year, missed the rest of the season, and everyone's saying, oh, he's going to be so great. And then Riley Leonard didn't even have that much better of a game, 18 of 30, so he completed 6 more passes, 158 yards, so he threw for 58 more yards. But Leonard didn't have a touchdown. He also didn't have an interception. And this game, very similar to the Iowa one that Kaz was describing, even though this game was 6-6 going into halftime, it was still very low scoring. No touchdowns were scored yet. And it was right there for the taking, and the Aggies weren't able to do it. And to me, it had a lot to do with Connor Weigman. But we can move on from here and focus on this upcoming week, unless any of you guys have anything that you want to add. But Connor Weigman, to me, just seems overrated. And again, I'm a guy who writes for a Texas A&M website. I'm still not that locked in on Texas A&M, but there's just been so much hype about this guy, and he looked very pedestrian to me. Notre Dame could end up having a top 5 defense in college football this year across the nation, but Connor Weigman did not look good at all in this game. And so, I mean, Toddy, you're kind of the college football expert on this panel. What do you think of Connor Weigman?
So I think he broke his foot or something last year. Max Johnson came in, and he was Max Johnson way better than this. This was fucking atrocious. The way that he played this weekend was god awful. Could not complete it. I think it was 4 of 13 for his downfield
passes over 5 yards. Yeah,
it was fucking embarrassing. And Riley Leonard wasn't even that good either, because he'll look at one read and he'll take off running. I feel like that was the difference in the game. Him being able to escape the pocket and avoid sacks, and him be able to scramble for first downs. That was kind of what kept Notre Dame in the game. And their defense obviously forced 2 turnovers. Weigman could not complete a fucking pass to save his life. And it was bro, the running game wasn't even that bad either. And I thought that they could have mixed it up with the play calling on first down. They just kept running it on first down. And I felt like that was kind of something that Notre Dame will look forward to. But it was embarrassing, because we had a hot week on the hotline, and all A&M had to do was just if he could just complete passes. There was a 4th and 8 where he just threw the ball out of bounds because he thought he had a free play, and I'm just what are we doing? What are we even looking at? It got to a point where I was just you need a new quarterback at this point. I get it's week 1, but it's you can't. These are the games that you have to win if you want to win. If you want to get into the college football playoff, these are games that you have to win. And it just seemed like Notre Dame was free money, because they were plus money, and they're going to be favored in pretty much every game that they play for the rest of the season. So I felt like this would have been the best price you would have got them at this season, unless you bet them live, obviously. But yeah, they won the turnover battle, and their quarterback didn't even throw a touchdown pass, and they won the game by 10 points on the road at Kyle Field, which is the Kyle Field is literally the hardest. It seats 107,000 people. That's the most in college football. So I mean, you can only imagine what the atmosphere is like. So I mean, that's just me. I'm just a guy who bet on sports and picked the wrong fucking team, apparently.
Well, you nailed it with that analysis, even though that was your only of 4 picks from last week that didn't hit on the hotline. But 75% of the picks hitting, I think that's a damn good percentage. And you really nailed it when it came to the Texas A&M analysis. The only thing I'll add to that is, may I nominate Marcel Reed as the new starting quarterback of the Texas A&M Aggies, because I may be new.
I thought
to
their
Texas
defense
A&M.
played well. Like A&M's defense played good. Like they were able to get more possessions for Wegman, like more chances for him to, try and make something happen. But I mean, can't play offense and defense. So I mean, he just has to play better, bro. It's not.
Yeah, he definitely does. And Texas A&M is supposed to have a top 5 defensive line in the nation this year. And so if they're getting that kind of production, but then they're being brought down by the quarterback, which is the exact opposite of what your Trojans used to deal with, where they were getting so much production from the quarterback, but the defense was lacking. Now it's the opposite. Through week 1, it's the opposite for the Aggies. And I may be still a casual when it comes to Texas A&M football just because I started writing for this website back in December. So I only saw their bowl game. But the one thing I saw in that bowl game is that because Jaden Henderson got hurt on the first play, I'm pretty sure it was the very first play of the game. If not, it was the first drive. He gets hurt. So then Marcel Reed comes in as a true freshman in that bowl game last year, and they still lost to Oklahoma State. But Marcel Reed looked good in that game. He showed his versatility in that game. And that's something that I was not seeing from Connor Wegman in this game. And so it might become a hot seat for Connor Wegman coming up if the Aggies can't get going here early in the Mike Elko era. But guys, as we keep things moving here on episode 111 of Stats Over Politics, I did want to ask you all about one game that's coming up in college football this upcoming week. And it is a top 10 matchup as the number 4 Texas Longhorns travel to Ann Arbor, Michigan to take on the reigning, defending national champion Wolverines. And so, Kyle, I'm going to start things off with you on this one. Where are you leaning in this game? Are you going to go with the national champions who are kind of in a rebuild, or the Longhorns who seem to be national title or bust this year?
I for surely think the Longhorns definitely have even though Michigan won last year, I feel like the Longhorns are too good of a team. I feel like this is definitely their year to make something happen.
Yeah, I think it's now or never for them. I mean, they do have Arch Manning coming down the pike, but they got to cash in with Quinn Ewers, who is such a great talent, so much so that he was able to basically take a year to go to Ohio and get some NIL money before it was legal across the country. All power to him. He made $3 million to not play. But then Kaz, he ends up going to Texas, which is where he wanted to go all along. But because it was legal to get NIL money in 2021, 2022, Toddy, you could correct me on that. But it was 2021, 2022 when Quinn Ewers spent a year with the Buckeyes, cashed in on some dealership deals, and then he went right back to Texas where he was going to be all along. But Kaz, I know that you mentioned a major pump fake, and all power to him. I mean, good for him. If I could do that exact same thing, I would do it as well. But Kaz, I know that you mentioned earlier, you said that a friend of yours was a Michigan fan or a Longhorns fan. I know I heard one of the two.
No, I'm glad you did bring up Michigan because that's definitely a game I'm going to watch next week. So I can get more involved with this stuff, right? Because two things. I have two friends of mine, and actually they have been on previous videos on my YouTube channel. One's Izzy, and the other one is my boy Zach Brown. They're both diehard Cowboys in Texas, like big time. I'm talking about my boy Brownie. He hit me up at 6 a.m. with a Snapchat. I was, of course, asleep. He's like, I'm already drinking, getting ready for this. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, bro. Absolutely. Like, you guys don't even play. They didn't even play till, the afternoon, right? Like, the Texas game was in the afternoon, right?
Yep.
Longer, yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, what? But he's one of those crazy college guys where it's like, it's an all-day thing for him. But no, so my two friends, Izzy and Zach, they're diehard Texas. But my family member who lives in Florida, but she has I'm not sure if she has season tickets or whatever, but she flies to Michigan all the time to go to Michigan games, big time, her and her husband. So I'm actually excited for this because I want to see how both of them are going to react to this game because it sounds like it's already like a big deal, two of the best teams in college right now. So it's going to be interesting just to see how crazy it gets. Now, for an early prediction, as someone who doesn't know much about either team, I will say this. Watching some college here and there, national champion at home, I don't think you're going to go in there and handle business like that personally. If you do win, it's going to be a nail-biter, but you're not going to go in there no matter how good your roster is and win in the big house. If there's one thing I know about college football is the big house is a hard place to play. I've been there. I actually was there. What was it 2 years ago when I went to the Detroit Eagles home opener? I actually went with my cousin, who I believe the day before that on Saturday went to the Michigan home opener or something like that. I can't remember, but regardless, either home opener or second game. But regardless, it was we did a tour around the big house, and I was like, wow, like this place is crazy. And yeah, I don't think that Texas will. I don't know. I'm spitballing here, but I don't think that Texas is going to go in there and handle business against the defending national champions, whether or not they're in a rebuild or whatever you want to call it. They still got Division I athletes that after you win a national championship, players want to go there. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, you want to go to the school that's going to give you the best chance to get a national title, not a school that's just going to pay you a lot of money. And, there you sit and you just want to enter the draft. So I think it should be a good game, but all in all, I mean, I'm going to kind of root for the big house, man, for the Michigan Wolverines, because that's my family. So sorry, Izzy, sorry, Brownie, if you guys are tuning in at all. Yeah, I'm going with the Wolverines.
And Toddy, before I get your thoughts on this game, because I know you'll give us the real deal analysis for it. For me, it's politics over politics here, not even stats over politics, no choice. It's politics over politics, because on one hand, there's the Michigan Wolverines, who, as an Ohio State fan, I cannot stand them. The last 3 years have been tortured because, like Toddy says, we, in regard to the Trojans, we as Buckeyes fans own Michigan for so long. And now not only have they gotten the upper hand in that matchup 3 years in a row, but they won a national championship, which is something that the Buckeyes haven't done in a decade now. And so as an Ohio State fan, I want to root against Michigan anywhere and everywhere. But then as a writer for Texas A&M, a lot of my articles tend to circulate among Longhorns fans. And then I get a bunch of dumb comments on X from strangers talking behind an egg, talking behind whatever fake profile, insulting my work just because they're like, oh, well, the Texas A&M's a cult, blah, blah, blah. All these things that Longhorns fans have to say to disparage Texas A&M. And so I kind of feel some type of way about Longhorns fans. So I'm torn, but my hate for Michigan will always overweigh everything. And also, real deal, stats over politics. I just think that Texas has a better team this year. Michigan is in a rebuild, as I alluded to when I asked Kyle about his pick. And so for that reason, and Quinn Ewers is a baller. He could be the number 1 pick in next year's draft. So I'm going to go with Texas to pull off the upset. Not even an upset because they're a higher ranked team, but I get Kaz's argument that you're playing on the home field of the reigning national champions. But I'm going to go with the Longhorns. Toddy, who you got in this matchup between Texas and Michigan?
Yeah, so Kaz, if you are feeling lucky, you can get Michigan at plus 235. So they're dogs in this game. Texas is favored in this game, Shaun. They're favored by 7, and they're minus 285 on the money line, which is kind of insane. I think Vegas is kind of scared of Michigan. Their quarterback situation is what it once was last year. Obviously, they lost J.J. McCarthy to the NFL. Their quarterback play is very nonchalant. They were hoping Alex Orji would win the competition in fall camp, but Davis Warren is kind of the guy. He's a starting quarterback, so he was the guy that took the majority of the snaps. But people kind of were hoping and thinking that would be Alex Orji, but apparently that's the opposite thing. So this game is the over-under in this game is 44.5, which is pretty low scoring because Michigan's defense is like top 3. They probably have the best defense in all of college football still, but their offense is kind of non-existent, I would say. Now they did put up, they blew out I believe it was Fresno State, so they had a bit of trouble with Fresno State this last weekend. So this should have been a team they should have put 60 points on, but they ended up winning 30-10. Now Texas, on the other hand, I feel like they're more talented. They have the transfer from Alabama, Isaiah Bond. Quinn Ewers is another guy who I think is going to be in that Heisman candidate race. And I think they also have the coaching advantage with Steve Sarkisian, who's like an offensive wizard. So them kind of going into, I think before this game, before like week 1 started, This game was at 4.5, so the line jumped tremendously to 7. Kind of after watching this game, or kind of watching both teams in week 1, and I think, Texas kind of has the talent advantage, coaching advantage. I think they just have better players on both sides of the ball. I think they're pretty evenly matched on defense. Michigan probably has a better defense than Texas, but I think overall, from an overall standpoint, I think Texas is just going to outclass them. And this Texas Michigan game is definitely on the hotline, so stay tuned for that.
What a tease. That's an excellent tease on your part. And so let's get right to it.